Okay, thank you, Nova. Hey, everybody, welcome. I'm using Elon Starlink internet today, so if this whole thing falls apart, it's not VRIFY's fault, it's Elon's fault. I'm going to share my screen and we're going to get right into it. When we made this, when we were talking about this webinar, we thought it'd be more exciting we thought it'd be more exciting to see if we can do it in 20 minutes, and then we just figured we'd try and do it all live. So I'm going to go as quickly as I can through it and see if we can do a 3D presentation from scratch using the new deck editor that we call it, the presentation editor. What you're looking at now is, and sorry, before I do, just a couple shouts out. I want to give a shout out to Philippe from the CEO of Cartier. We're going to be using some Cartier 3D content today. Philippe and I jumped on a call earlier this week to do a VRIFY video recording, interview style video recording, and we rebuilt and kind of did the video in about an hour and a half. So thank you, Philippe, for being a champ and for just letting us go through it. And I should say that as I go through and I build this presentation today, what I'm showing you do not take as representation of what's actually going on at the Chimo mine in Val d'Or. I'm just using it as demo content. Okay, here we are on our website. I wanted to start here because it's really important to understand that everything that VRIFY does is web-based, and it's one of the most, I would say, the most compelling parts of our product. So because I'm logged in right now, I'm just going to click on Editor, and up at the top here it says VRIFY Webinars. That would just be my company name. We just created a company called VRIFY Webinars, and what I've done here is I've just created a presentation. So anyone the bulk of the participants in this call are existing VRIFY clients. I see a few names for people outside of VRIFY. But so a lot of you have already seen this. Anytime you come into this part of the website, this admin side, I typically just click on decks, and this is a list of all of your presentations. And then for today, we're gonna be working with this webinar 3D presentation. So I'll click on this, and what we have here is a 3D model that's already been built. So there's two primary steps to building contents on VRIFY. The first is building the 3D model, and that's where we roll up our sleeves, and we have a 25-person team, sort of data 3D implementation team that takes client data and turns it into a 3D model. And when that's done, you end up with a 3D model like we're seeing here. All I've got is the only layer I have turned on in this 3D model is the topography. And what we'll do is we'll build out from that. The second step to the presentation, where we'll spend most of our time today, is taking that 3D model with all of those layers and then turning it into something that you can actually use in an investor presentation. Now, this new editor that you're looking at, it's going to feel a lot like, I say, a Google Slides or a PowerPoint. It's or any sort of presentation editor. It's built very much to look and feel like something that you're already used to. On the top left hand, it says create slide, and we're going to spend the bulk of our time today with a 3D slide, but any of these type of slide types can come into a VRIFY presentation. So a PDF slide, and that's your corporate deck as it exists today. An image slide might just be a photo that you want to add, and a 360 slide is 360 photography. And then there's some other ones we're working on, like meeting slides, where there's a slide within your presentation that think of it like almost like a Calendly style link where somebody can book a meeting with you. And there's one that will be coming out called an Ask a Question slide too, where through this interactive presentation, investors can actually interact with you instead of just having to view it on your website. So we're going to start. We typically start with topography when we're building a presentation, but that being said, we're kind of testing this right now. The beautiful part about digital presentations is you get a lot of analytics. And the way you should think about your presentation is think about the same way you think about a press release. A lot of people are going to, a lot of your audience, you're losing them on every single word and every single line and sentence. So you kind of want your most impactful information first. And it's not because the stuff at the bottom of the press release isn't that exciting. It's because people have a shrinking attention span, and by the time they're at the second paragraph, they're thinking of something else. We try and apply that thinking to our VRIFY presentations. So even though we're starting with topography to set the regional stage, we are looking at maybe we actually start with the most exciting drill hole and then build the story out from there. The beautiful part about these 3D presentations is you can rearrange them as you go. So here we're looking at, this is Val-d'Or, Quebec. This is the Chimo project. What I'm going to do is I'm going to right click here and hit duplicate as new scene. You'll see within VRIFY, sometimes it says scene name and sometimes it says slide. I'm going to say Chimo close up. I'll rename this. And then what we'll do is we'll hit edit scene. And by edit scene, and now that I've got edit scene on, you can see all of the various layers. So I'm going to zoom in over here, and to zoom in, I'm just scrolling my mouse. And the two biggest interactions you need to know if using VRIFY is if you click the left mouse, it rotates it, and if you click the right mouse, it moves it. And you can see that little circle in the middle. That's where it will zoom into. So what I'm going to do is zoom in here. I'll put the Chimo mine boundary on, and I'll just scroll down. Maybe I'll turn on the above ground labels, find a viewpoint that I think kind of tells a bit of the story. Maybe we'll turn off the outside boundary just to make it a little more focused. And then I'll hit save. So what I've done is I've created my first or my second 3D slide. And it takes a second to, it'll take a second to update. Now the servers have been updated. And now anytime when I click between these two transitions, I now have my first 3D slide. Now for this story specifically, you can see the old shaft. This is a historic mine site, and they're going through and drilling it and looking for extensions and expansion ounces close to the old mine site, but also some regional work as well. So I'm going to turn on, and just to set the context, I'm going to go through, and you can see each of these things are lighting up as we go through. So I just have an idea of where those layers are. I'm going to make the topography. We have a little more transparent layer, and I want to put the old mine workings on. So I'll put on the drift, the shaft, and you know what I made a mistake of is I forgot to duplicate his new scene first. So I'm going to go back and do that, and I'll put underground workings. It's the beauty of doing stuff live. There will be a few mistakes today. Underground workings, and I'll go back through that again. So I'm going to kind of go closer to the shaft, rotate it so it's underground view, and then we'll turn on, let's turn on drift, shaft, maybe the stopes. We'll leave those ones for now, historical mine. And I'm going to do this pretty quick, but typically what you often, the way to approach a VRIFY presentation is not to think of it as just replicating screenshots in Power. Like, you're not trying to create a 3D of what it looks like in PowerPoint. What you'll often do is, if you think of a typical PowerPoint slide, you're trying to get a lot of information into that. In a VRIFY presentation, what you want to do is break that up into 2 or 3 transitions. So what we might do, and I'll do in here, we might turn off the, we'll put on the shaft and the drift, but we'll leave the stopes off. So first things we'll do is show it like that. And so we now have the underground workings. The 3D scene is updated. I'll duplicate as a new scene. And underground workings with stopes. And then we'll go back and we'll just turn on the stopes for that as well. And maybe it all depends on what point you're trying to make. It might be just trying to show the orientation for those stopes. I'll hit save and go through. Next, we want to show, so now kind of we have a presentation that's just starting to come together. So this is a bit of a longer one, and that we want to spend some time setting the stage. But now we're going to take a step back. I'll duplicate it again and get into the more exciting stuff, because investors aren't investing in your company because you have old tunnels. They want to know about where you're drilling and how that drilling is going to add value to your company. So let's we'll turn on the drilling. I'm going to go back, hit edit scene, and you can see these labels on the side. They'll light up as you go, and they've been broken up. In this case, you have your 0.1 to 0.5, so you've got different grade buckets as we go through, and then some drilling highlights as well. So let's turn on the, we'll put on all of the drilling, and then the assays as well. And I'm going to turn that on. And I think what we'll do is we'll turn on, one thing you have to be really careful with is not to put too much on at any given time, because otherwise it's really easy for someone to just not really understand what they're looking at. We try and keep it to sort of 2 to 3 things on any given slide. And I'm already showing a lot here. So I'll turn on the legend as well. I believe there's a legend for the drilling right there. So you'll see one thing about VRIFY right now is these legends are not dynamic. They're in a fixed point. So you end up trying to sort of find your, you end up trying to find a 3D slide or viewpoint that fits it. These will be, in the near future, these will be dynamic. So they'll just kind of sit in the bottom corner. And as you move, they'll never be out of the screen like you see them there. So I'm going to, I'll save this right here. So now we have all of the drilling. And then I know that when I went through this with Philippe the other day, a big part of it is just showing kind of the gaps in the actual drilling. But before we do that, what's really important for this one is just to show the orientation. So I'm going to do 2 scenes here. Now that we've already seen the legend, I just did it again. I forgot to duplicate. So I'll hit, and I'll put drilling, looking, I believe it's east. Sorry, Phil, if that's wrong. Edit scene. Let me see what I've got here. Okay, so we go from underground workings to drilling, and then to drilling looking east. So we'll edit this, and all we're going to do is I'll turn off that drill label, and I'm going to rotate it to get a nice view. So now you can see right down the pipe. Save. And then the scene that we'd actually created when we're going through it is just because you're still looking at a lot, and I'll just duplicate this one again. There's still a lot, visually you're still seeing a lot. I'm just going to turn off the drilling. And then you, in this case, you can see sort of the orientation and zoom in and find the right viewpoint, because the reason for this is just wanted to be able to show the orientation of these veins, because for this company specifically, they want to talk about sort of, are there other veins and that can be discovered on site? And what you'll often see, it's as you're going through, it's really important with a VRIFY presentation. You sort of sit between the technical 3D software and your quite simplified PowerPoint presentation. It's very important that it's not, a VRIFY 3D presentation is not just trying to take your 3D content and make it work in a web browser so you can speak to it. It's very much trying to take the narrative that you have within your investor presentation or whatever, whether it's a more of a technically minded or focused presentation or more of a retail focused presentation. It's to think of those key elements that you're really trying to communicate within the 3D or within your investor deck. And then what are the 3D elements that can actually help with that narrative? So allow the narrative to drive the slides versus just saying, I have all of these 3D layers and slides, and I need to find ways to visualize all of them. Because, and we've done that a lot in the past, what you end up with in that case is a very kind of convoluted, complicated presentation that almost is in a lot of ways worse than just the simplified deck. I'm going to take a pause here, and I'm going to share something with everybody in the chat. So in the top right, where it says access. So the content I'm taking you through is not accessible. It's private content. So a lot of the time when you're working on content as a company, it's things that you don't want to share. You might have 10 different presentations, but only one of them sits on your website. You might have one that you use for groups you have NDAs with, or just corporates you're talking to, or more technically minded institutional investors. So you can share all of your VRIFY content privately as well. So I just clicked on access. I hit secure link. So I'm going to create a new secure link. I'll just call this one link for sharing. I'm not going to add a password, or there's other ways. And I'll create that link, and I'm just going to put this link in the chat. And let me find the chat here. This will allow everybody to you can click on that link and you can see this thing now being built in real time. So at any point in time, if I add new slides to it as I go through it, just click refresh on your browser. They're not going to show up until you refresh. So going back to it, I'm going to drilling looking east. So when you're using this in a presentation, there's a lot, like if you were to just send this to someone, they might not know what they're supposed to know, whether it's red or yellow or the orientation. When you use this in a presentation, you'll be annotating and drawing on it and so on. And one of the things we're really trying to educate all of our clients on is don't try to put too much in 3D. We don't need lines and arrows showing where absolutely everything is, because when you use it in a live presentation, it's much more engaging if you're actually drawing on that in real time. And it's why VRIFY content, the way that VRIFY content is being shared more and more is less sending people links, and it's more you recording yourself going through it and then sending them a link to the video of you going through it. And we'll talk a little bit more about that, and I think we're doing another webinar on how to share content. But the main point I'm trying to make here is the 3D content is think of it like your canvas to tell your story. It doesn't have to tell the entire story yourself. That's still up to you to bring that in. If this is going to sit on your website, you'll see in the bottom left here the ability to insert a caption, and what that shows up is just a subtitle, essentially, as somebody's clicking through it. So time check, I think I've got 5 more minutes. I'm going to duplicate another slide here, and I'll rotate back because I know that a big part of this story, and I'm not going to put on the resources, and we have a lot of other content here, but a big part of this story is showing the areas that have not been drilled. So I'll zoom right out, and now you can see here, and I will save that. And again, using that canvas analogy, if this is sitting in a presentation, what you would be doing here is talking about these areas and drawing circles that have not been drilled, and maybe there's some high grade hits that sit within some specific individual hits that you'd want to flag, and where you've got one, say something down here. I'll zoom right in on one. Actually, why don't we add one? Duplicate as new scene. High grade hit at depth, and we'll just pretend I'm not sure which one. This is a super high grade hit right here. We'll isolate that one, and then we don't have a label for this, but what we'd probably do is add a label with the assays on it, something like that. Hit edit scene, save, and then you'd have we'd turn on a label here as well. And now, sort of the way this would go in a story is kind of, we're really excited because we hit this high grade at depth. And what we would probably do is duplicate something like this. I'll duplicate his new scene. And then I'll move it down, and you can see I just drag and drop shift. So now when I'm using this in a presentation, I can click through. We're really excited about this, and you can see, and maybe what we do is zoom out just a little bit around it, rotate a bit so we can see where we're going to go do some drilling. And all of a sudden, we've created this storyline. Instead of just, you think of right now, it's sort of a plan map or a cross section with an arrow that shows a high grade hit. We've created this storyline that we can speak to, where here's a high grade hit at depth. Imagine a core photo pinned to this with the results, and then here's the area in the coming kind of weeks, months we're going to drill. And again, this is a good example, is we don't need 3D files of those proposed drill holes. We can put them in, but it's just as easy in a live presentation to draw them and communicate that yourself. So I'll duplicate again. I'll put a bit of a closing scene on this, and for that, maybe we'll rotate back up to surface. We'll turn off some of these. We don't need the above ground labels. We probably don't need the Chimo. And I believe we had some photos. So maybe we actually just want to show something that sort of makes it a little bit more real. Let's see where those photos are. We'll throw in a photo of some drilling. And this is another one where you can see it's this fixed, it's the fixed size of these photos. It sort of restricts the viewpoint that you're able to have. We're changing that so these will actually scale. So if you turn on a label or a photo, it'll just whatever viewpoint you frame, it'll just automatically scale the photo to that size. That's saving. So we've gone from here back up to drilling looking north. And maybe what we'll do is we'll finish it off with, I'll turn off those photos right here. And I think there might be some overlays. And this is just this is a lower res version, but this is just it's sort of, you can see here how if there is technical data that would be a ton of work to replicate in 3D, we can always just bring it in as the 2D drape that as it exists today, put that in, and then we've got that transition that you can draw and talk about regional targets. But a big part of any VRIFY presentation is you're trying to tie it all back together. So I'm going to just cancel this one. But as I go through, and so we've gone from here to the Chimo mine, and I'll skip that one. Here's all of the drilling you can see in the area. This is the story we're trying to tell. And maybe it's a historic producer that was never drilled at depth. And if we look at sort of the Val d'Or area, mines go down to 3,000 meters. So let's find a viewpoint that just tells that story. And then later on, when we bring it back to that regional part of it, we're trying to tie it back to, remember what I told you about the historic Chimo mine producing and how they never drilled at depth. Here is sort of the regional potential, and these are areas that have never been drilled the same. So again, the whole thing I wanted to show with this is that 3D can be very intimidating. A lot of companies use a lot of really good software to build 3D models. But from that point on, where we step in is helping take all of that great content and just turn it into something that can be used in a story. But one of the problems is nobody has excess time. So if this takes weeks and months to put together into 3D presentations, nobody's going to use it, which is why we built this entire product, because the idea is you can now build personalized presentations. We're essentially trying to work ourselves out of a job by giving you more and more abilities and capabilities in how you edit this content. The last part I'll do here is if, say, we wanted to now turn this into an investor presentation. Right now it's just 3D slides. So I'll just hit create slide. I'm going to upload a PDF, and I've just saved the corporate presentation for this company here. And what will happen is it'll upload the PDF, and then I can add these slides as well. So as it's going through, it's uploading the PDF. I probably just, in this case, I would probably just I'll take one to, we don't need to put them all in, but I'll just take like slides one to 5. And we're adding a thumbnail view here, so you actually be able to just select what slides. It's going to insert those slides into the presentation. It'll do it wherever my cursor was, so I'll just move the topography down. And now what I have is that if anyone who's clicked on that link in the chat, if you refresh that link, you have your corporate presentation, all of that content, and we just go through and rename it to, this would be title page and so on. And you've added that together alongside with your 3D content as well. And what some companies do is they'll go through and they'll take the first 3D slide and screenshot it and then put it into a PowerPoint slide. And then you've got this really elegant transition from the PowerPoint or keynotes or PDF portion of your presentation right into the 3D. The last part I will go through, I'm probably over 20 minutes now, but I figure we've already built the 3D, is I'm just going to add a 360 slide just so you can see what that feels like. So here we have some 360 shots, 360 photography. These are drone shots. Say this one is of the old mine tailings. I'm going to import this. So now I've got a drone shot that sits within that presentation as well. And you can see what we often try and do when we bring in photography is we try and match it to the 3D model. So I'm just going to hit save. And this one's nice and visual, so I'll probably be able to find this in topography. But I'm going to hit duplicate, and I'm going to say old mine tailings. And what I'm going to try and attempt to do here is replicate this same viewpoint, if I can do it, from within here. So I'll turn off the boundaries. We don't need that. We probably don't even need that. And it's probably something that looks, I don't even know if I'm coming at it from the right angle, but something that looks kind of like this. So now the idea is, and if you refresh that link within the presentation, when you're going through this presentation, satellite imagery is only ever going to be a certain resolution. It allows you to take your drone shots and then add them so you have that similar viewpoint. So when somebody's going through, and you can imagine this is one thing to show sort of a 2 or 3 year old satellite image. It's really powerful if you bring into that some photography from might only be a week or two before. I will pause it there. There's all kinds of other things I want to show you, but I think I've used up my allotted time slot. I think I'm going to pass it over to Sarah now. Sarah's a product designer. Sarah and her team get a ton of credit for everything that you're seeing here. This has been an absolute grind to get it to this point. Sarah's just going to take us through some of the details in editing 3D and 360 slides. Sorry, just 3D slides, I believe, today.
Yes, just 3D. Thanks, Steve. I'm always really fascinated at how Steve puts together content so quickly and tells such a compelling story. It's quite amazing. So I'm just going to share my screen here. And of course, while Steve is obviously super comfortable with the various 3D objects and layer names in his 3D model, we really wanted to develop a tool that any user could pick up and use super quickly. So if you've ever felt intimidated by the sheer number of layers in your 3D model, or are not quite familiar with the layer names, I'm actually going to go through today some controls that might be especially helpful for you. The first is actually being able to right click on any layer that you see in your model viewer and contextually deciding if you want to hide or show it. And so this is super helpful for users who aren't quite comfortable with referring to the layer list to hide or show the various layers in their model. So there you go, I've hidden that layer. And the second is the ability to actually hover over any of the layers in your layer list and see a blue visual representation of it in your model viewer, as you can see right here as I'm hovering over layers. This helps users who at one point might have seen a layer they may want to use for their storytelling. However, they aren't quite sure what the corresponding layer is named in the layers list. The third is actually the ability to right click on any given layer and focus it in the 3D viewer. This helps you if you're unfamiliar with where certain layers are positioned in your model, especially bigger models. You will see that when I click on this, the camera will center the layer for you in the viewer there. So it's really easy for you to find things. Now, if you're a user who is super comfortable with your model and its layers, you want features that can really help you with speed. I'll walk you now through controls that power users can take advantage of. The first is the ability to actually select multiple layers by holding down Shift or Control or Command, and then right-clicking to hide and show multiple layers at one go. The second is the ability to actually right-click on entire categories to be able to hide and show layers all at once. So I'm going to do this on my topography category right now, and you'll see all my topography layers have been hidden. So now that I've covered controls that are useful for both beginner and advanced users, I want to go through some general controls that are going to be useful for everyone. While I assume, of course, everyone knows how to rotate a 3D model by clicking and dragging, it may not be super obvious how you can actually frame your 3D slide to focus on exactly what you want. So here are some tips. So if you want to zoom in on any specific area, all you'll need to do is simply move your mouse to the area that you want to focus on, and then pinch on your touchpad to zoom in or use your mouse's scroll wheel to zoom. And that'll help you zoom into exactly the area that you want to. As you can see, it zoomed in exactly to the area where my mouse is. Another super helpful tip is to be able to pan by right-clicking and dragging, or holding Control or Command and dragging as well. So this will help you change your model's frame of reference so that you can have things either aligned towards the left hand of your screen or the right hand of your screen. I hope this overview was helpful. I'll now pass it to Nova for some quick announcements and a Q&A session. Nova, I think you're on mute.
I am on mute. Great. I was just saying I have some great questions to ask Steve, and I'll invite him back up on stage. So here he is. Steve, one of the questions that was asked, are we planning to support Leapfrog 3D models?
Yeah, so we don't think of, like, there's Leapfrog does an incredible job in sort of helping clients model stuff. We're on the visualization side, so whether it's built in Leapfrog or any other kind of 3D software, we can take that and turn it into a VRIFY presentation. It's we have an export strategy for pretty much every big mining and geological software package now.
Perfect. Can we collaborate live in meeting mode with another colleague while creating slides?
Can we collaborate live in meeting mode? The best way to do it, to edit slides and so on, is to screen share, and then so you can both be in the editor while you're in say a Zoom call, be making edits. But just imagine, like, I've done that before with PowerPoint and sort of other shared docs. You just always have to be careful if two people are trying to edit the same thing at the same time. But that's just communication. So yes, you can. Everything we do, because it's web-based, as you're making edits, it's very similar to how Google Slides works, and that sort of as soon as you move that one slide to another slide, that edit is done for everybody in real time.
Perfect. Can I insert notes, polygons into the frames that I'm creating? Was another question that was asked.
I'm not sure. I would say I'm not totally sure I understand notes. So we are adding the ability to add labels. So as you go through and create your presentation, you can click on things and add labels. So that might be a drill assay. It might be this is a rock. It might be this is a plant. It might be a photo of some core. So you'll be able to do that yourself. What we're essentially doing is taking more and more off of our 3D team and your data team and putting it more and more into the hands of the people that are actually kind of presenting and going through it. On polygons, I don't know if this is the question you're asking, but we will, and this is further down the road, add the ability to add things like a big open arrow and other things like that. But the ability to directly add polygons or 3D files to the editor, that's a 2024 thing for us.
Perfect. I'll open it up to kind of any more questions. So if you have any more questions, feel free to put it in the chat. While I'm waiting for those to come in, I also have some help articles for Deck Editor 2.0 that I'm going to link to in the chat. So feel free to take those, take a look at those. We have yeah,
no, but one other thing, I'm just to finish it off. What I'll do is I'll VRIFY has their own collaboration software as well for live presentations. So I'll take that model I just built and I'll show you what that feels like. I'll play the role of the CEO, Philippe. I hope I do an okay job. Those are big shoes to fill. And I'll share a link in the chat. If everybody can put their name, just click on the link in the chat, put your name in. You can throw your credit card number in if you want to. And then I'll walk you through what it feels like to be in an investor presentation as you go through it.
Perfect. Perfect. Well, you get that link together and I'll just put together one last piece for everybody. We have some exciting updates coming out today. So keep your eye on your email for some exciting updates from VRIFY. We've also just announced our in-person meeting features, some amazing updates to there in terms of syncing iPads and live share. So one big thing, if I can get you to do anything after this webinar, is make sure that your VRIFY app is up to date. So you can take a look at our new in-person meeting features and how to sync across iPads. The best thing is you no longer have to download all your VRIFY decks onto all iPads when presenting offline. Now you only download on your one deck. So we can thank our amazing Sarah and our product team there for that help. And then if there's any other questions, or if there's not any other questions, I think we'll pass it over to Steve to kind of give us a presentation of the deck he just made.
Okay, I don't think we've done a 40-person VRIFY presentation, so let's see if we can crash the mainframe. I'm going to share my screen here. Thanks, Nova, and thanks, Sarah, as well. A ton of work from the product and our dev teams have gone in, and a lot of great feedback from our clients as well. It's fun to finally be able to share it. Okay, so here's I'm in the deck editor. What I'm going to do is I'm going to go right all the way back to the dashboard. So this is again, if this is your company, it would say your company name here. I'm going to click on meetings, and I'll do start a meeting now. And because we're in this webinar, I don't need video conferencing. I could turn on video, but typically think the primary use case where VRIFY is used is alongside a Zoom or a Teams call or something like that. So let me webinar. VRIFY webinars. There's the one we just created. So I'm going to copy this info, and this is the information I'm going to put into the chat. And what it's going to do is it's going to you'll open this up in a new browser, and you'll see the biggest thing you'll see is this sidebar is about to disappear. So only the host gets to see the sidebar, and you're going to actually download the 3D model to your browser, so there'll be zero lag in the transition. So some of you might have seen some lag in sort of how I'm transitioning through the model, because that's completely reliant on my and your upload and download speed. So we'll get rid of that. I'm going to put that in the chat here. I'll give everybody 2 seconds to register. Yeah, it's a good point, Adam. I just saw that comment there. If there is any lag, that's Elon's fault. Okay, we can see all these people joining. We are now at, looks like 15, 17. I'm just going to give it another 30 seconds. Okay, it's a little bit inception-y because I'm sharing my screen as I'm presenting in a different browser. But I'm going to stop sharing my screen in a second. Just wanted everybody to see what it looks like from my point of view. Okay. Okay, looks like, okay, we're at 25. Looks like we've got 30. And so as I click through, again, now all you're seeing is me going through. I have annotations. What you'll find is when you're annotating with VRIFY, it doesn't matter if it's a 3D slide or a PDF. As soon as anybody draws a circle around something, everybody looks at that. So you'll find that some of our clients, if they're, say, at an investor conference and they maybe have 4 or 5 different mine sites, they'll just use PowerPoint slides or corporate deck within VRIFY because they simply just really want that annotation feature. When you're in a live setting and everybody can see exactly what you're looking at the same time, it is really powerful. It's going through, again, take any slide like this, the second anyone draws a circle anywhere on it, assuming they actually use the right color, everyone's going to look at that. Next, I'll flip the 3D, and this is where each of you is going to see, like, it takes, this is a massive file. There's a lot of content within this 3D model that we didn't get to, with the block model, the resource shapes, a whole bunch of other content, core photos. This whole thing, we get down to about 26 megabytes. So now I have control over it, but I'm just going to click through, and I'll tell you the story as if I was the CEO. So here we have our mine site. It's a historic mine site. Oh, sorry. There is a little bit of historic infrastructure Here's a high-res drone photo of the old tailings, and you can see in the distance, this is the old mine shafts. And we're actually have a drill rig that's sitting over here right now. I'll switch back to this. Now looking at that site where you can see where it says the old shaft right here. I'll show you what that shaft looks like. This thing was in production 30 years ago. Again, just a disclaimer, I'm making this all up as I go. It was an underground narrow vein deposit. You could see the old historic stopes, and we have all of this level of detail right into every last stope. But the real story for this one is if you look at all the drilling that's been done on this project, and I'll flip around to look at it from the east so you can see the orientation. All of the drilling that's been done in this project and everything that's been found so far, if I take a step back, it's really focused on sort of the upper zone. So in this core area, it's like the bulk of the drilling sits down to about 800 meters and is in this area here. And we're really excited to go test this and this and this. Typically, probably not quite as messy as I am. Again, I'm trying to go through this quickly. But one thing that's important to note is the second I rotate the model, all those annotations disappear. So those aren't stuck to it. Then we talked about this really high grade hit that we had at depth, and why we're really excited is because if we kind of look in that area, nothing's been drilled around it. We're going to see if we can find an extension. And I'll jump back to that other viewpoint so you can see sort of how little drilling has been done at depth. And those are the drill rigs. As you can see here, it's both winter and summer at the same time. Again, this is just an example of how to bring photos into it. So that is how you would present something in 3D. I'll go back and nicely done, you're hired. Thanks, Tessa, appreciate that. We're now at time. There is actually one more thing I want to show. We still have 40 people on, so may as well do it. I'm going to go back and share that screen. So we're gonna do two separate webinars. One for how to present with VRIFY and actually go through the detail of when you annotate, how you kind of transition. There are a lot of little things, like if I'm going to transition from something like this, instead of just clicking on the next slide, it's really helpful to draw an area and then transition to it. But we're going to do a separate webinar on that. But the other thing I wanted to share today is, now that we built this beautiful presentation, is we've just launched this video recording feature. And you can see that down at the bottom, this right here at the bottom, this, because I'm the host, I had this red button. And what the video recording does, and I'll tap video record, I'll hit start recording. It's going to create, I can now create 3D VRIFY videos, and all it's going to do is, you can see it's now recording. It's only recording what you just saw in that screen that I shared with you. So it's not recording the sidebar. It's not recording any of the buttons. So as I go through, and I'll just do it really quickly, right now I'm recording a high resolution 3D animation, and I'm going to skip I'll skip the workings, and I'll just go right down to the drilling, and maybe we'll talk about the drilling to the east. And here's an example of where we really want to show the orientation of that area, and drilling looking north, and I'll leave it at, we want to drill right there next. And now I'm going to hit stop recording. Recording is complete. Within 60 seconds, I have a high resolution video file, not an interactive link, but a video file that I can use on social media. And the way that we've created this, and the way that we've created the software, and I just got the email saying that the link is ready. So I'll put that link in the chat so you can see it. But the way we've created this now is, it's so easy to create high resolution videos that you can actually answer investor questions with them. So if an investor asks you a question, it's quicker to record a 60-second response than it is to actually, it's quicker to record a 60-second response than it is to spend some time trying to write it out. The video that I just posted, so that's the landing page for the video that I just created. That what you're going to see there is there's no audio or video, and that's because we're in a webinar, and I'm already using my audio video elsewhere. But you can actually add audio and video. You can add audio video to it as well. So again, knowing there's a lot of clients on this call, I guess we are private recording. So for everyone who's watching the recording, we'll find a way to get you the links, because obviously you don't have the links in the chat as we go through them. But that is the direction we're going. Feel free to reach out to anyone at VRIFY if you want more training or to learn how to use this various all these different tools that we've gone through today.
Great. Thanks so much, Steve. And thanks so much, everybody, for attending today. Just a reminder, there will be a special update coming from VRIFY a little bit later today with some exciting news. So keep an eye out for that. Other than that, you'll also receive an email from us with all the links that were provided in the webinar today, as well as a recording of the session. So thank you so much, everybody. And thank you, Philippe from Carde Resources, for letting us experiment with your model. So thanks so much, everyone. It was great to have you today.
Thanks, Nova, and thanks, everybody.